Hey everyone, it is Chris, and we are going to talk about one of my favorite changes in the 2024 Player's Handbook, the Monk. So in the 2014 Player's Handbook, I felt the Monk was not only the weakest class in the game, but there was a pretty big gap between the Monk and the next weakest class. Now, a lot of people felt that the Ranger was the weakest class in the game in the 2014 Player's Handbook, and I'm hearing some of the same stuff about the 2024 Player's Handbook Ranger. I disagree in both regards, and that is because the Ranger, take away all the features, other than spellcasting, it is a half caster and otherwise kind of a martial on top of that. And so you put those two things together and already you're ahead of what a lot of the non-casters can do. So I don't buy that on either respect. I actually felt the Monk in the 2014 Player's Handbook was just really hard to make effective. Definitely find a big difference in the 2024 Player's Handbook Monk. But before we get into, I'm going to go over every feature. I'm going to show them up on the screen. I'm going to show every subclass and subclass feature up on the screen as well. But I would ask, these videos are getting about 30,000 or above views per video, which is fantastic. Thank you so much for watching. And in my channel, most of the people who view are already subscribed. I am pushing for 100,000 subscribers, and just based on about a third of people not subscribed who are watching, that would be enough to push me over that 100,000 goal that I have for this channel. So if you aren't subscribed, I'm going to ask you to please subscribe. That's it. Let's start talking about the Monk, and this is going to be pretty much all good news, but there are a few things that irk me a bit. But overall, I'm very happy with what we've got here. So with our core Monk traits, one thing that has changed slightly are weapon proficiencies. We have simple weapons and martial weapons that have the light property. So our old version up on the screen right now had simple weapons and short swords. So our new Monk is also going to have proficiency in scimitars and hand crossbows, which the old one didn't have. Alright, and then at first level, we're going to get martial arts. It says your practice of martial arts gives you a mastery of combat styles that use your unarmed strike and monk weapons, which are the following. Simple melee weapons, martial melee weapons that have the light property. You gain the following benefits while you're unarmed or wielding only monk weapons and you aren't wearing armor or wearing a shield. You get a bonus unarmed strike, so that's same as always, except now you no longer need to take the attack action in order to make that strike. So if you're doing something else with your action, you can still make your bonus unarmed strike, which is great. Also, because of the changes to unarmed strike, that means as a bonus action, we can also grapple and we can also shove, which gives really nice options as well for the Monk. Martial arts style, you can roll a d6 in place of normal damage for your unarmed strike or monk weapons, and it scales with your level. And basically, this is going to be the 2014 version, except the die is always scaled up by 1. So when it was a d4, it's now a d6. When it was a d6, it's now a d8, and so on and so forth, until you get to a d10 previously, that is now a d12. Okay, and then we're going to have dexterous attacks. You can use your dexterity modifier instead of your strength modifier for attack and damage rolls of your unarmed strikes and monk weapons. That's always been the case. In addition, when you use the grapple or shove option of your unarmed strike, you can use your dexterity modifier instead of your strength modifier to determine the save DC. That is going to make a monk a good grappler and shover, which it never was before, because those have always been based on previously athletics, which is also based on strength. And monks just can't afford a good strength score. You need to have a good wisdom score. You need to have a good dexterity score. And you can't ignore your constitution. Just doesn't leave anything left for strength. So now, because we're focusing on dexterity anyways, we're automatically going to be a good grappler and shover. And grappling is, I think, the way that we're going to see a lot of monks go. I'm going to talk a little bit more about that in a bit. And then at level 1, we're going to get unarmored defense, which has not changed. So that's basically your armor class is 10 plus your wisdom modifier and your dexterity modifier, assuming you aren't wearing armor or wearing a shield. Just taking a quick look at our monk features table, it should look very much like the old version, except for the martial arts die scaling 1 higher. But other than that, I mean, our unarmored movement is going to scale at the same rate. We're going to get the same number of focus points, previously called key points, but they're the same thing. So not a lot of changes here. So at level 2 is when we get our focus points, and we're going to start with 2, and it is just like in 2014, you can have the same number of focus points that you have in monk levels. As before, you're going to keep track of your focus points, and when they run out, you don't get them back until you complete either a short or long rest, and you get them all back no matter which one you do. So short rest, recovery is still going to be a thing for monks. We're going to get 3 starting options for our focus points, and all 3 of these have been improved. So we got all these before at 2014, but none of them are as good as they are now. So Flurry of Blows, you can expand 1 focus point to make 2 unarmed strikes as a bonus action. The change here, the improvement here, you no longer need to take the attack action, just like with martial arts. So you can do something else with your action, and now you can make 2 unarmed strikes, and remember, because they can also be grapples, because they can also be shoves, they're better than ever. Then we have Patient Defense. You can take the disengage action as a bonus action. No cost. No focus point cost at all. They've always, I figure, should have been able to do this. They can now do it. Alternatively, you can expend 1 focus point to take both the disengage and the dodge actions as a bonus action. The old version of Patient Defense lets you expend 1 key point to take the dodge action. So even if you expend the key point or the focus point now, it is better. And if you don't expend a focus point, you have another option. And then Step of the Wind, you can take the dash action as a bonus action. And alternatively, you can expend 1 focus point to take both the disengage and dash actions as a bonus action, and your jump distance is double for the turn. So being able to take the dash action without expending a focus point is new, and if you do expend the focus point, you get the benefit of disengage, which you didn't get before. So all 3 of these are just straight out better than they were before, and because Patient Defense and Step of the Wind now have options within them that don't require focus points, monks are actually going to start to use these things, because before it tended to be when you got to level 2, you started doing Flurry of Blows. When you got to level 5, you started doing Stunning Strikes, and that's where your key tended to go. So now I see a lot more balance in how you can expend your focus points and more things you can do without expending focus points. I think this is all good. Now, when we get to level 5, we're going to have to talk about how rebalancing things in the other direction can also be helpful, in my opinion. But for now, it's all candy. We're just getting good stuff. Level 2, we're also getting unarmored movement. So when we're not wearing armor or wearing a shield, we get an extra 10 feet of movement, and it is going to scale at the standard levels. Now in 2024, the monk gets something else at level 2, and this is a brand new feature. It doesn't replace anything called Uncanny Metabolism. We saw this in the playtest. But basically, when you roll initiative, you can regain all your focus points once per long rest. So normally you're going to have to wait for a short rest, but once per day, basically, you're not going to have to. You're going to roll initiative, you're low on initiative or keep points or focus points or whatever, and you see that, oh, this is going to be a big fight. I'm going to get them all back. A great feature, and is really going to help to alleviate that focus point strain of everything feeding off the same resource. Though I will note there's a number of things that, like what we've already seen with Patient Defense and Step of the Wind, where things that used to cost focus points no longer will. So I think that strain is already reduced. This reduces it even more. Then level 3, deflect attacks. This used to be where you deflected ranged attacks. Now it can deflect melee attacks too. So it has been massively improved, considering that my assumption would be most monks are engaging in melee when they can. So you're going to take more melee attacks than ranged attacks, I would assume. And therefore, this is just going to come into play far more often than it used to. It says, when an attack roll hits you and its damage includes bludgeoning, piercing, or slashing damage, which are the most common damage types, though I've seen in more recent design more tendency for monsters to do other kinds of damage, but they still are really common. You can take a reaction to reduce the attack's total damage against you. The reduction equals a d10 plus your dexterity modifier and your monk level, so there's nice scaling here. If you reduce the damage to 0, you can expand 1 focus point to redirect some of the attack's force. If you do so, you choose a creature you can see within 5 feet of yourself. If the attack was a melee attack, this could be the attacker, or a creature that you can see within 60 feet of yourself that isn't behind total cover if the attack was a ranged attack, which again could be the attacker. That creature must succeed on a dexterity saving throw or take damage equal to 2 rolls of your martial arts die plus your dexterity modifier. So, I mean, the big change, of course, from 2014 is it works on melee attacks, though if you spend the focus point to redirect it, there are some changes there as well. In 2014, you actually made an attack roll. You had a short range of 20 feet and a long range of 60 feet, meaning there was a good chance you're going to have disadvantage on that attack roll. I don't think it was ever really worth it. Now that there's a much better balance on where you can expend your focus points, I do think this is something I might do just to increase my overall damage. But the big thing is we can do this without expending a focus point if we don't redirect the attack, and I think monks are going to do that all the time. This is going to be their reaction defense, which means that feats like defensive duelist and such aren't necessities for the monk, which is going to reduce the amount of feats that they need or really want to take. They can just rely on this class feature for that reaction defense. And I think they're going to use it all the time, and it's quite good. I used it in the playtest, and it worked exceptionally well. At level 3, we're going to choose our subclass, and we can choose Warrior of Mercy, Warrior of Shadow, Warrior of the Elements, or Warrior of the Open Hand. Of course, if you're using old source books, you can use all the other stuff too. And this is the same level that you got this stuff in 2014. Monks get their ability score improvements at the standard levels, so starting at level 4, then 8, 12, 16, and then Epic Boon at 19, which is just a standard ASI, except that you happen to qualify for Epic Boons now. Then at level 4, we're going to get Slow Fall. This has not changed. You're going to use your reaction. You reduce any damage you take by the fall for an amount equal to 5 times your monk level. And there's around the mid point, you get to the point where it doesn't matter how far you fall. You're going to take no damage or probably take no damage. Decent feature. Doesn't come up all that often, but when it does, it's useful. Level 5, of course, extra attack is a big deal. Monks still get it. It still works the same as it always has. Then let's talk about Stunning Strike, which we also get at level 5. So this was the most powerful feature of the 2014 monk. And whenever they hit with an attack, they could expend a key point and attempt a Stunning Strike. The opponent would make a Constitution saving throw. If they failed, they were stunned until the end of the monk's next turn. This is the new version of Stunning Strike. Once per turn, when you hit a creature with a monk weapon or an unarmed strike, you can expend 1 focus point to attempt a Stunning Strike. The target must make a Constitution saving throw. On a failed save, the target has a stun condition until the start of your next turn. On a successful save, the target's speed is halved until the start of your next turn, and the next attack roll against the target before then has advantage. So, a number of changes here. Probably the most dramatic change is that it is limited now to once per turn, which means you attack with your extra attack and your flurry of blows, and maybe you hit several times. You can still only attempt Stunning Strike once. So it's going to just limit the amount of focus points that you're spending on this feature. Second thing is the duration has technically been reduced. So before it was until the end of the monk's next turn, now it's until the start of the monk's next turn. So a common strategy was to stun an opponent, and then on your next turn, you of course had advantage on all those attacks. And now you won't, because that stun will end at the start of your next turn. Though you will have advantage on any further attacks you make during that same turn that you do the Stunning Strike. But that is technically a reduction in power. The one improvement it's had is if they make their save now, they have their speed halved, and the next attack roll made against that target before then has advantage. That's pretty minor, I would say. 1 attack with advantage and half movement, and you're presumably already in melee or close to melee. You could be using a thrown weapon. Now, another change here is that the 2014 version required that Stunning Strike used a melee attack That's no longer the case. As long as you're using a monk weapon, you can attempt a stunning strike, meaning you will be able to attempt stunning strikes at range. So that is a buff. So there's two places this has been buffed. The first is that we can do it with ranged attacks. The second is we get a partial effect if they make their saving throw. But the once per turn is definitely a substantial nerf, and the duration reduction is a notable nerf as well. So is Stunning Strike less powerful now? I think it is. I think it's a little bit less powerful. It is going to change how we play our monks. But just the once per turn thing, I mean, that in itself means that we're going to have more focus points to expend elsewhere. So we are going to just see monks doing Stunning Strike, just like they always have. I still think it's well worth your focus point, but you're going to have more focus points. So you're going to expend them in other places, which means monks doing more things than just stun, which I think is great. So I'm behind the Stunning Strike change. In the playtest, we saw a version where if they made their save, they took additional damage instead of being stunned. I thought that was interesting. I playtested it. I thought it was a little weird. This is a far more, I think, intuitive change, that if they make their saving throw, then they have kind of a partial stun. Though I will note, it's been pointed out to me recently that the stunned condition in the 2024 Player's Handbook does not say that your speed is reduced to 0. So you can still technically move on your turn while you're stunned. So it's kind of interesting that if they make their save, their speed is halved, but if they fail their save, they're still going to have their full speed. That's a little odd, but nevertheless, that's Stunning Strike. I'm behind it. Let's keep going. Level 6, Empowered Strikes. This used to, I think it was called Key Empowered Strikes before, and it used to have your attacks treated as magical. It definitely appears that's no longer a thing in 2024, so if your attacks deal bludgeoning, piercing, or slashing, they just do bludgeoning, piercing, or slashing. And creatures will either be resistant to those things or not resistant to those things. There's none of this, if your weapon is magical, you can ignore it. So that kind of feature is of no value anymore. So now you can exchange your damage type for force damage, which is a reliable damage type. So, probably a lateral move. Then level 7, Evasion has not changed. So this is the one where if you are subjected to an effect that requires you to make a dexterity saving throw to take half damage, you take no damage if you succeed and half damage if you fail. Nice feature. I think it says here you don't benefit from this feature if you have the incapacitated condition. I believe that's a new addition. Let me double check. Yeah. The old version of Evasion did not have that restriction. So if you are incapacitated, you lose your Evasion now. You didn't used to lose it. So technically speaking, that's a slight nerf as well. Hopefully you're not incapacitated too much. Level 9, we get Acrobatic Movement. I don't think this was listed as a separate ability in the old Player's Handbook, but monks still had it at the same level. So if you're using your unarmored movement, you gain the ability to move along vertical surfaces and across liquids on your turn without falling during the movement. So if you're, running across water, you can run across it as long as you don't end your turn in the water. If you end your turn in the water, you're going to sink down. But yeah, a nice little feature, mostly a flavor thing, but it occasionally has a mechanical value. All right, level 10 has changed dramatically for the monk. So this is when they used to get immunity to disease and to poison. Now they no longer get either of those things, but instead we're going to get heightened focus. So what's going to happen is our Flurry of Blows, Patient Defense, and Step of the Wind are all going to scale. Flurry of Blows is now going to give 3 unarmed strikes instead of 2. That is a huge improvement. Patient Defense. When you expend a focus point to use Patient Defense, you gain a number of temporary hit points equal to 2 rolls of your martial arts die. That's a significant amount. At level 10, we're at a D10? So 2D10, not bad. And then Step of the Wind. When you expend a focus point to use Step of the Wind, you can choose a willing creature within 5 feet of yourself that is large or smaller. You move the creature with you until the end of your turn. The creature's movement doesn't provoke opportunity attacks. So now I want to talk about grappling. Okay, so I kind of hinted at before how I think monks are going to be really good grapplers, and they are. But this is where I think monks are really going to come into their own. We talk about martial caster divides, where spells are better than anything non-spellcasters can do. But I do think there's a teamwork factor involved. So previously, like let's say you had a spell like Spirit Guardians. If a creature moves into the Spirit Guardians on any turn, they take the damage of the Spirit Guardians. So one of the plays in the 2014 rules was to, when it's not the cleric's turn who has Spirit Guardians, other characters push or grapple and drag enemies into the Spirit Guardians, thus triggering the damage. Here, now, in the 2024 rules, I don't think that's the play anymore, because there's been a change to those kinds of spells, like Spirit Guardians, where they tend to do damage at 3 different points. They do damage if a creature moves into the emanation on any turn. They do damage at the end of a creature's turn if they're in the emanation. And they also take damage when the emanation moves into their space. And that's the key. That's brand new. Wasn't in 2014, but it is in 2024. So let's say you are a monk and you are 10th level, and one of your allies has Spirit Guardians up, and one of your allies has Conjure Woodland Beings up, and one of your allies has Jalarzi Storm of Radiance up. So they all have these emanations around them that they do damage to enemies, they do other things that are bad to enemies. What you could do as a monk is you could use your attack action and extra attack, and you could grapple 2 allies. They're not going to resist because they're your allies and you're about to help them. Then you could expend your bonus action for Step of the Wind, expend a focus point, and then you could grab that 3rd ally using that because you don't need a hand for this Step of the Wind feature. Then you have monk speed with a dash action to move them around into the space, or so that their emanations move into the spaces of all the enemies. And if you need more movement, the grappler feat works really well here because it means your movement isn't even slowed. So you can have, basically you can double the effect of 3 casters in your party. So if we're talking about martial caster divide, which is something I talk about a lot on this channel, where spells are better than no spells. But if we can double the effect of 3 character spells, I kind of think that monk plus 3 casters is definitely better than 4 casters, no monk. Not saying that casters couldn't grapple other casters and move around, but not like this. Not anything like this. So what we are seeing is definitely some teamwork here, where I think if it's not just about which class is better than which class, it's which classes go with other classes. Because with a monk, you're going to want to have teammates that have those emanation spells, and you are going to be able to help them so much. Anyway, Heightened Focus is fantastic. All 3 of these are good. And I just wanted to explain why Step of the Wind I think is especially good. At level 10, we're also going to get Self-Restoration. Through sheer force of will, you can remove one of the following conditions from yourself at the end of each of your turns: Charmed, Frightened, or Poisoned. In addition, foregoing food and drink doesn't give you levels of exhaustion. That's incredibly circumstantial, probably isn't going to come up. But let's just talk about the Charmed, Frightened, or Poisoned. So previously at level 10, the 2014 monk was immune to poison, so that wasn't an issue. They were never poisoned. But with Charmed and Frightened, what they had was the ability to use an action to get rid of those conditions. And I've mentioned this many times before, that one of the issues with that feature is that if you have the Charm condition or the Frightened condition, you might also have restrictions on what you can do with your action. So if you couldn't use your action to remove those conditions, then your ability to do that was kind of pointless. Here, we don't have to worry about that. But the other thing I'm going to mention is, even if you could do it before, that meant you basically lost your turn because you're using your action to remove the conditions. Of course, you couldn't use your martial arts or flurry of blows before because you're not taking the attack action, so you basically lose your turn. Now you're going to be able to take your turn. Now you might have to deal with the Charmed or Frightened conditions on your turn, but at least you can do something. And then at the end of your turn, they're just automatically gone without an action or a reaction or anything required. So this is an improvement in my opinion, though it does come on 3 levels later. The old one came on at level 7. At level 13, the 2014 monk got the ability to talk to other creatures that use different languages. Level 13, right? The comprehend languages was available to wizards at level 1. The tongue spell, level 5. So this was just so late and circumstantial. Now we have something that is going to be huge for the monk. You can now use your deflect attack features against attacks that deal any type of damage, not just bludgeoning, piercing, or slashing. That means that any turn that the monk is going to take damage from an attack, they can use their reaction and reduce the damage, meaning they're going to use that deflect attacks feature just all the time now. Don't bother looking for other ways to use your reaction, because your reaction is going to be used by deflect energy all the time, and it is going to make a substantial difference in the amount of damage that you take. When we look at things like the shield spell, which wasn't changed in the 2024 Player's Handbook, and I read it and I'm like, oh, I can't believe they didn't change shield. But then I go into the rest of the book and I keep finding things like this, where other reaction attacks just got or reaction defenses, I should say, just got so much better, so that you don't need the shield spell anymore. The monk doesn't want the shield spell. They want just their regular deflect attack and deflect energy, which are baked into the class. You don't need to worry about feats or spells or anything. You just get them, and you're just going to use them, and they're going to be great. It is only one attack, so if you attack 10 times, you're still going to take a boatload of damage. But just the fact that you're able to do it round after round after round, it's going to add up. All right, level 14, Disciplined Survivor, is not changed. This used to be called, what was it called? It was called Diamond Soul. It's now called Disciplined Survivor, but it's the same. You can get proficiency in all your saving throws, and you can expend a focus point to re-roll a failed save. Good feature. Comes on very late, but a good feature for sure. Then at level 15, Perfect Focus, when you roll initiative and don't use Uncanny Metabolism, which is the one that you automatically restore all your focus points, you regain expended focus points until you have 4 if you have 3 or fewer. This is very close to the old Capstone, which was terrible. Still not a great feature. I don't see you entering a lot of combats with 3 or fewer focus points where you're not going to use Uncanny Metabolism. Yeah, you're going to have a pretty grueling day, I think, at level 15 to be going into any combat without your use of Uncanny Metabolism with 3 or fewer focus points. I just don't think it's going to happen. But in the really odd case where it does, I guess this is not useless. But I just don't see it coming up. Then we have Superior Defense at level 18. At the start of your turn, you can expend 3 focus points to bolster yourself against harm for 1 minute, or until you have the incapacitated condition. During that time, you have resistance to all damage except force damage. So the old version was an action. It was called Empty Body, cost 4 key points, and it made you invisible for a minute, and it was like greater invisibility, so you could make attacks and stuff, and it wouldn't reveal you. And of course, invisibility, the advantage there is that they have disadvantage to attack you, and you have advantage to hit them. And you also get resistance to all damage, but force damage. So the invisibility is just gone here. It does reduce the cost, 3 focus points. The big improvement here is that it's no action. The other one was an action, which meant, you were going into this big fight where you want to use this major feature, and the first turn, you basically did nothing but set up, which is terrible. You just don't want to give up your first round of combat in setup, in my opinion. Don't have to do that anymore. I'll make that exchange. Personally, I'll make that exchange all day, where I get my action back, but I don't turn invisible. That's just fine. I'll take this. The other version also let you use astral projection. Yeah, astral projection using 8 key points. Super circumstantial spell, like ridiculously circumstantial. So I don't think you're gonna miss it. Level 19 Epic Boon. It's just an ASI, and they call them all Epic Boons just to remind you that you can qualify for an epic boon at this level. But epic boons do not require you have 19 levels in any class. So if you're 19th level and you get any ability score increase, you can take an epic boon. And then level 20, we get a new capstone called Body and Mind. You have developed your body and mind to new heights. Your dexterity and wisdom scores increased by 4 to a maximum of 25. The reason it's a maximum of 25 is because an epic boon might add a +1 to either your wisdom or dexterity. In fact, it's very likely going to add a +1 to either your wisdom or dexterity. So now you can make them 25, right? So you're not going to lose any of your +4. Obviously 25 is no different than 24, but if you keep playing at level 20, you'll keep getting epic boon feats, and then you can go to 26, and that is better than 24. So if you're going to get to level 20 and then stop, it doesn't make a difference. But if you're going to keep playing, it will. This is exceptional. This is probably the best capstone in the game. I think we could make some arguments other ways, but I think it is. Dexterity is your attacks, it's your damage, it's your armor class, it's your initiative, it is one of the most common saving throws, and then wisdom, also one of the most common saving throws. It's the DC of all your abilities, and it is also your armor class because you're a monk and you have unarmored defense. So adding to both of them, just fantastic. It exceeds the Barbarian capstone, which is a good capstone, because with the Barbarian capstone, only one of those ability scores applies to your armor class. Couldn't think of the name for a second. Now they both do. So it's just better, in my opinion. This is just icing on the cake. They've done such a good job of making the monk better almost all the way down. There's some cases, Stunning Strike, we can argue about whether it's better or worse. I think it's a little bit worse. I don't think it's a lot worse, though. Otherwise, pretty much all boosts all the way down the line. I mean, you're not immune to poison anymore, but for the most part, boosted all the way down. And then we get this fantastic capstone as well. Do I think the monk is the weakest class anymore? Absolutely not. Do I think that, the monk is weaker than casters now? That's tight. It really is, because I talked before how I think monks are going to make casters better. So it's a teamwork thing. Which one is better? 2 casters or a caster and a monk? I'd say a caster and a monk is better than 2 casters. So take that for what it's worth. And is the monk better than other martials now? Yeah. I think the monk is actually maybe the strongest martial now. It's I'm going to need some experience to know for sure, but it looks to me on, just based on the playtesting I did, as well as just looking at the features, to me it looks like the monk is the best martial, in my opinion. Okay, so let's look at the subclasses. So when they said the Warrior of Mercy was going to be the subclass from Tasha's that they were going to be pulling over to the 2024 Player's Handbook, I was glad, because I like the Warrior of Mercy. Or I guess it was called the Way of Mercy before. But I gotta say, they nerfed it. They nerfed it, and it makes me a little unhappy. But let's take a look. I am going to go through this fairly quickly because it's mostly identical to Tasha's. Hand of Harm is the same. Good feature, it's the same. Hand of Healing is the same. Decent feature. Implements of Mercy is the same. And Circumstantial, that's the ribbon. So at level 3, I think you're doing just fine. Level 6, the features scale. Again, there's no change. Hand of Harm here looks really good because you can deliver the poison condition whenever you use Hand of Harm on a creature, which, I mean, basically, unlike Stunning Strike, does not have a saving throw. And this one, unlike Stunning Strike, does last till the end of your next turn, though poison doesn't actually give you advantage on attacks, so maybe that's not much of a difference unless you're provoking opportunity attacks or something. But nevertheless, very strong feature. The biggest issue with this feature is so many creatures are immune to the poison condition. But as long as they're not immune to the poison condition, you should be using Hand of Harm all the time. And this just makes it so much better. And Hand of Healing is circumstantial. The notable thing about Hand of Healing is it removes the stunned condition. Not many things in the game remove the stunned condition. The Cleric is going to have a tough time removing the stun condition, but you as a Warrior of Mercy can do that. So level 3 you're doing well, at level 6 you're doing well. It's level 11 where things start to hurt. It says, when you use Flurry of Blows, you can replace each of the unarmed strikes with the use of Hand of Healing without expending focus points for the healing. In addition, when you make an unarmed strike with Flurry of Blows and deal damage, you can use Hand of Harms with that strike without expending a focus point for Hand of Harm. You can still use Hand of Harm only once per turn. That's where the old feature ended. This is what they've added. You can use these benefits a total number of times equal to your Wisdom modifier. You regain all expended uses when you finish a long rest. So they put a limit, and a tight limit, right? Our Wisdom modifier, I mean, we're focusing on Dexterity and Wisdom, so it might be anywhere from a +3 to a +5. So 3 to 5 uses. That's not very many uses. And it's another resource that we have to track. I'm not sure why this is here. I never really thought that the level 11 feature was broken. Like, it was good, but it wasn't one that I thought was in need of a rebalancing, and they've made it more clunky by giving us something else to track. So I'm really not impressed with this change. And then level 17, Hand of Ultimate Mercy, is the same as it's always been. So the Warrior of Mercy just got nerfed. The level 11 feature is a fair bit worse. Everything else is the same. So disappointing, and this is where be careful what you wish for. I saw Warrior of Mercy was going to be in the new player's handbook, and I'm like, great. But I think, now in retrospect, what I should have been hoping for are subclasses I wanted to change, not subclasses I wanted to stay the same, because some of them pretty much stayed the same. Like, we saw with fighter subclasses and the Psy Warrior. Other ones got changed, and not always for the better, and this is one of those cases. Okay? Alright, so let's move on. So we got the Warrior of Shadow next. This is from the 2014 Player's Handbook. I like what they've done here, but I imagine some people won't, because there are changes that aren't all clearly buffs. There are, things they could do before, particularly spells they could cast before, like Pass Without Trace, they can no longer do. So I do think some people who were really into that subclass because of that will maybe be disappointed they can't do that anymore. But what they can do has been seriously enhanced. So I'm a pretty big fan of the changes here. All right, at level 3, we're going to get Shadow Arts. So just one feature at level 3. We get Darkness. We can expand one focus point to cast a Darkness spell without spell components. The old version could do it, but it required 2 key points. You can see within the spell's area when you cast it with its feature. Didn't have that before, which kind of sucked. So now they can expand one focus point. That's cheap. Get the Darkness spell, and they can see through it, which is huge. While the spell persists, you can move in its area of darkness to a space within 60 feet of yourself at the start of each of your turns. This is going to be important because darkness, although you can see through it, your allies may not be able to see through it. Probably won't be able to see through it. In which case, it could really screw them up. So you're going to want to be careful about where you place it so that you're getting the advantage from it, but they're not being hindered. So the being able to move it is important. And I honestly wish they had allowed the Warrior of Shadow to reduce the area of effect, but they haven't done that. Now, I haven't play tested with this very much, so how much of a hindrance that darkness spell might be for your allies, I don't know yet. Dark Vision, you gain a Dark Vision with a range of 60 feet. If you already have Dark Vision, its range increases by 60 feet. Nice feature. Shadowy Figments, Minor Illusion, and you cast it with Wisdom, though that probably doesn't matter unless somebody is using Investigation to try to determine if it's an illusion, which doesn't happen very much. And this is the same as before. So, yeah, I think Shadow Arts is really good. But that's their only 3rd level feature, and the previous one could cast, let me just verify what they could cast here. Darkness, Dark Vision, Pass Without Trace, or Silence for 2 key points. Now, obviously, Dark Vision's built in now, so you don't have to expand any focus points for that. but Pass Without Trace and Silence, those options are now removed. Alright, level 6, Shadow Step. While entirely within dim light or darkness, you can use a bonus action to teleport up to 60 feet to an unoccupied space you can see that is also in dim light or darkness. You then have advantage on the next melee attack you make before the end of the current turn. I don't think that changed at all. Yeah, no changes at all, except keep in mind that if the darkness that is enabling Shadow Step is the darkness spell, you can now see through it. Previously, you couldn't see through it, so you couldn't Shadow Step through it. Now you can. So, I mean, it has been buffed, even though mechanically it works the same. Level 11 features been completely changed. The old version allowed you to turn invisible in dim light or darkness. Now you can draw on your Shadowfell connection to empower your teleportation. When you use your Shadow Step, you can expend a focus point to remove the requirement that you must start and end in dim light and darkness for the use of that feature. So if you are in a case where you need to teleport to somewhere or from somewhere without dim light or darkness, now you can. The way I read this is you neither need dim light and darkness or darkness at either your starting point or your ending point. So the way I read this, you could teleport from an area of bright light to another area of bright light. As part of this bonus action, you can make an unarmed strike immediately after you teleport. So basically, you're getting your unarmed strike from martial arts, but this would normally require your bonus action, so you wouldn't get it. So you're getting it back, basically. So you can have your action and your martial arts attack in addition to the teleport. Good feature. Then level 17, Cloak of Shadows. As a magic action, while entirely within dim light or darkness, you can expend 3 focus points to shroud yourself with shadows for 1 minute, or until you have the incapacitated condition, or until you end your turn in bright light. While shrouded by these shadows, you gain the following benefits. You have the invisible condition. You can move through occupied spaces as if they were difficult terrain. If you end your turn in such a space, you're shunted to the nearest unoccupied space. And you can use your Flurry of Blows without expending any focus points. Remember, this is your improved Flurry of Blows, so we're talking 3 additional attacks there. This is really good. I mentioned that the old version got invisibility at level 11. That invisibility was broken by all the things that normally break invisibility. Now we're essentially getting greater invisibility, so it's just a lot better. The incorporeal stuff is good. The old version, or the old level 17 feature, which is entirely different, let them, basically it was like a sentinel attack. If, an enemy within your reach attacked one of your allies, you could use your reaction to attack them. But now I just think this is way better than that. And yeah, I think Warrior of Shadow is pretty strong now. Definitely, it's a subclass I want to play. I don't have a lot of experience with it yet, so I'll need to report on whether I think it's good after playing it, but it all looks really good. And no dead features here. All good features. Next, we have the Warrior of Elements subclass, which I consider a new subclass. It is loosely based on the 4 Elements monk from the old Player's Handbook. Closely enough based on it that I would assume that the old 4 Elements monk is no longer available for play. But this is so redesigned, I'm not even going to refer to the old version anymore. And the old version was not good. They got spells, but they got them late. And they required so many key to use that you essentially stopped being a monk to be a terrible spellcaster. Or you were just a subclassless monk. One or the other. Really, and poorly worded features, so it wasn't clear how they worked. They've just abandoned that whole thing, and this is just basically a brand new subclass. This is a subclass I have play tested multiple times, and it's good. At level 3, we are going to technically get 2 features, but the second one here, Manipulate Elements, is a ribbon. You're going to get the Elementalism cantrip. The Elementalism cantrip is not a powerful cantrip, it's mostly a flavor cantrip. So it's a ribbon, flavor, nice. The main feature, level 3, is Elemental Attunement, and this is fire. Or maybe fire. It all depends on what you choose. The start of your turn, you can expand 1 focus point, no action required, to imbue yourself with elemental energy. The energy lasts for 10 minutes. or until you have the incapacitated condition, you gain the following benefits while the feature is active. First, when you make an unarmed strike, your reach is 10 feet greater than normal as elemental energy extends from you. And second, when you hit with your unarmed strike, you can cause it to deal your choice of acid, cold, fire, lightning, or thunder damage rather than its normal damage type. When you deal one of these types with it, you can also force the target to make a strength saving throw. And on a failed save, you can move the target up to 10 feet towards you or away from you as elemental energy swirls around it. So, 10 feet of reach with all your unarmed strikes, or 10 additional feet of reach. So it's really 15 feet of reach because your unarmed strikes normally have a 5-foot reach. So 15 feet of reach with all your unarmed strikes for 10 minutes, and every single one of them can have a push or pull effect with a saving throw attached. No additional focus points need to be spent. And finally, we can adjust our damage types, so maybe we can take advantage of vulnerabilities or something like that. At level 3, we don't have the ability to make our unarmed strikes force damage yet, which means we're going to get reliability for unarmed strikes a little bit earlier. But, once we get to level 6 in Monk, force damage is very reliable, so I'm not really thinking about acid, cold, fire, lightning, or thunder damage as reliability things anymore. Potentially taking advantage of vulnerabilities if they exist, but most creatures aren't vulnerable to anything. It's mostly about we can push or pull every single attack. That's great. And then the improved reach, also very nice. Something actually I was asked about today was, it says when you make an unarmed strike, your reach is 10 feet greater than normal. So how does this affect if you want to grapple? Well, I think it depends, right? So obviously we can grapple with unarmed strikes. So if we grapple a creature that is, say, 15 feet from us, after our unarmed strike is done, we no longer have that reach, right? Because it says when you make your unarmed strike, your reach is 10 feet greater, not your reach is 15 feet with unarmed strikes. So my assumption would be that we make the unarmed strike, we could grapple, but as soon as we do so, if it's successful, well, our reach is no longer 15 feet anymore, and so the grapple would be broken. And also, I don't think we can do the push or pull, because otherwise we could pull them 10 feet towards us and maintain the grapple. But it says that we have to deal acid, cold, fire, lightning, or thunder damage in order to do the pull. And we're not going to be able to do that because if we're doing the grapple, then we're not doing the damage. Unless we have the grappler feat, which does allow us to do both with the same attack. So there's probably builds we can make where we can actually grapple somebody from 15 feet away and then pull them to 5 feet within us and maintain the grapple. But I think most of the time you're not going to be able to do it. Shoves, however, should be fine. So you could potentially shove, but why? When you can push 10 feet while doing damage. It's such a strong level 3 feature that I think it does make up for the fact that level 6 is a dud. As a magic action, you can expend 2 focus points to cause elemental energy to burst in a 20-foot radius sphere. Send it on a point within 120 feet of yourself. Choose the damage type: acid, cold, fire, lightning, or thunder. Sounds great so far. It's fireball. Each creature in the sphere must make a dexterity saving throw. Looking great. On a failed save, a creature takes damage of the chosen type equal to 3 rolls of your martial arts die, and no dexterity bonus. On a successful save, a creature takes half as much damage. So, 3d8 damage, save for half. If you can get a lot of creatures, still might be worthwhile, though, there is definitely a downside to not focusing your damage. But overall, this is just not that great. And I've attempted to use it and hit multiple enemies with it, and it's just, I don't know. It's maybe as good as a shatter spell, but Shatter Spell is a 2nd level spell, right? And at level 6, I don't know how much spellcasters are casting Shatter anymore. And that's when we get this feature. So, yeah, I just don't think it's very good. Then we're going to get to level 7. We get Stride of the Elements, which is good. Well, Elemental Attunement is active, which it can be in basically every single fight. Easy, right? We got 1 focus point, no action, and it lasts 10 minutes. You also have a fly speed and a swim speed equal to your speed. So whenever you need them, you can have fly and swim. Good feature. Level 17, Elemental Epitome. While your Elemental Attunement is active, you also gain the following benefits. Damage resistance. You gain resistance to one of the following damage types of your choice. the same choices you had for your damage or causing damage. At the start of each of your turns, you can change this choice. And then Destructive Stride. When you use your Step of the Wind, your speed increases by 20 feet until the end. ... of the turn. For that duration, any creature of your choice takes damage equal to 1 roll of your martial arts die when you enter a space within 5 feet of it. So it's kind of like a bit of a Chardalon Stride thing going on. Damage type is your choice of acid, cold, fire, lightning, or thunder. A creature can take this damage only once per turn. And this also means when we're grappling our 2 allies with emanations and then using Step of the Wind to move that 3rd ally with an emanation, we're also doing damage to all those enemies we're moving through. Just so much synergy. And then Empowered Strikes. Once on each of your turns, you can deal extra damage to a target equal to 1 of your martial arts die rolls. I read that wrong, but basically what I said. When you hit it with an unarmed strike, the extra damage is the same type dealt by the strike. And so, a little bit of extra damage. That's good. This very nice feature at level 17. This is a good subclass. Level 6 is a dud, but level 3 is good enough that it makes up for the fact that level 6 is a dud. Then in level 11 and 17, also really good. Strong subclass. Replacing a subclass that was all but not taken because of, just incredible costs for everything they could do. So, yeah. Love the Warrior of Elements. And we are going to finish up with Warrior of the Open Hand. And it just occurred to me that in my previous class videos, I was giving rankings out of 5 for all the subclasses. So I'm going to do that at the end of this. I'll rank all 4 of them. Just got back from vacation as I'm recording this, so I forgot about that. But I remembered at the last moment, so I will be ranking all of them out of 5. But we're going to finish up with Warrior of the Open Hand. This was actually a popular subclass from the 2014 Player's Handbook. I was not a fan of it. But anyway, let's look at the new version. Whenever you hit a creature with an attack granted by your Flurry of Blows, you can impose one of the following effects on the target. Addle, the target can't make opportunity attacks until the start of its next turn. The old version, I believe, was any reaction. So now it's just opportunity attacks that you prevent. Push, the target must succeed on a strength saving throw or be pushed up to 15 feet away from you. Topple, the target must succeed on a dexterity saving throw or have the prone condition. So one advantage of this is I do think we're going to see Flurry of Blows as a more prevalent option for monks, which means that our open hand monk is going to be using this more often or sacrificing less to use it, right? They're not giving up necessarily a bunch of stunning strikes in order to use their open hand technique because they're probably using their stunning strikes whenever they can and have additional focus points left over for Flurry of Blows. So I think this is going to trigger more often. Addle, the difference here, opportunity attacks versus reactions, that is technically a nerf. Right? Now, especially considering that they've started giving creatures more than one reaction, and often done that in place of, like, legendary actions. So not being able to turn those off is definitely a disadvantage. The push is the same as it was before. Just gotta compare this, right, to Warrior of Elements that can push or pull 10 feet with every attack for 10 minutes for 1 focus point. And this can do it once with every attack from Flurry of Blows. So not every attack on your turn, just Flurry of Blows attacks. And you can push but can't pull, though you get 5 additional feet, I guess. Doesn't seem as good to me, just saying. And then Topple, it's okay, but I mean, we have Topple Mastery now, which is basically free. For all the classes that get Weapon Mastery, for which monks are not one of them, so it allows them to compete. I think Open Hand Technique is fine. I think it does what it basically the same as it always has done, and so if you're a fan of Open Hand Monk, you're still going to be a fan of this. I think it's going to be less painful for you to use that Flurry of Blows more often, especially once you get to level 10, then you really want to use Flurry of Blows a lot. And it technically gets buffed at level 10 as well, because we're getting 1 additional Flurry of Blows attack. So we could potentially use this 3 times instead of twice. I think it's a little bit better than it used to be overall, despite the slight reduction to Addle. Next, we have Wholeness of Body. In the old version, you got a heal. It was one action, self-heal of 3 times your monk level once per long rest. Now, you gain the ability to heal yourself as a bonus action. You can roll your martial arts die, regain a number of hit points equal to the number rolled, plus your wisdom modifier. You can use this feature a number of times equal to your wisdom modifier, and you regain all expended uses when you finish a long rest. This should heal more altogether. It's using bonus actions instead of an action. It's usable more times. It's just better, right? Better feature. Not a huge amount of healing or self-healing, but it's better than it was. Level 11 Fleet Step is brand new. It replaces a feature that allowed you to cast Sanctuary on yourself once per day. Sanctuary, by the way, is a first level spell, though this one lasted a long time. But nevertheless, it was broken as soon as you did all kinds of different things that you were going to be doing. So it just wasn't very good. Now we have, when you take a bonus action other than Step of the Wind, which is going to be all the time because you're going to be using Flurry of Blows all the time. You can also use Step of the Wind immediately after that bonus action. So you're going to be dashing all the time. So open hand monks, super fast because they're going to be dashing all the time and Flurry of Blows all the time, right? And then level 17, Quivering Palm. So just to quickly go over how the old version worked. The old version, you'd hit a creature with an attack, you'd expend 3 focus points, you could set up Quivering Palm. And at first it does nothing, but you can expend another action later on to have your Quivering Palm go off, and the creature makes a saving throw. If it fails a saving throw, it falls to 0 hit points. And if it makes a saving throw, it takes damage, which was 10d10. Now, you gain the ability to set up lethal vibrations in someone's body. When you hit a creature with an unarmed strike, you can expend 4 focus points to start the imperceptible vibrations, which last a number of days equal to your monk level. The vibrations are harmless unless you take an action to end them. Alternatively, when you take the attack action on your turn, you can forego one of the attacks to end the vibrations. To end them, you and the target must be on the same plane of existence. And when you end them, the target must make a Constitution saving throw, taking 10d12 force damage on a failed save, or half as much on a successful one. You can only have one creature under the effect of this feature at a time. You can end the vibrations harmlessly if you want to. Okay? So one use of this is just going to do less damage. If they fail their saving throw, they used to take basically infinite damage, right? Whatever it took to get them down to 0. Now they're going to take 10d12, which will likely be less. If they make their saving throw, they will take half of 10d12. In the old version, they would take 10d10, not halved. So once again, less. The advantage here is how often we can use it, because we can hit somebody, we can set it up, and then we can forgo one of those attacks on that turn, set it off. And so we can just keep doing it over and over and over and over again, and keep having that creature take the damage over and over and over again. And they're always taking some, whether they succeed or they fail on the saving throw. So, yeah, I mean, very quick drain on your focus. This is 4 focus now. But just the frequency in which you can apply it and set it off is so much faster now. That you can basically have this battery of damage where you can Nova like nobody's business with the open hand monk now once we get to that level. And I think this is the kind of damage where we can potentially out-damage even those characters who are going to abuse Conjure Minor Elementals. I betcha I can do more damage with this in the short term. Gonna run out of focus points soon enough. But in the short term, I bet I can do as much damage with this as anything. So yeah, very, very nice feature. So, Warrior of Mercy, let's start with. So, in the old version, I would have said 4.5 out of 5 in Tasha's. Substantial nerf to level 11. It's not the end of the world. I mean, it's still a decent subclass. I'd say 3.5 out of 5. Warrior of Shadow looks really cool. I am going to have to play this to know exactly how powerful it is, but it seems like it's going to pretty much always have a disadvantage to be attacked and advantage on attacks and pretty much infinite teleports. It looks really, really good. It's a 4.5 out of 5. Warrior of Elements, dud level 6 feature, but all the other features are good. Very strong subclass. Played this one multiple times, and it delivered. I'm pretty comfortable giving this 4 out of 5. And then Warrior of the Open Hand, I think it is better than it was by a fair amount. I think open hand technique has obviously been buffed because of the improvements to Flurry of Blows. Wholeness of Body has obviously been improved. Fleet Step has obviously been way improved, or improved over the old level 11 feature, I should say. And Quivering Palm, it's arguable, but I think it has been improved as well. So the old version I would have given, honestly, a 1.5 out of 5. I thought it was a failure of a subclass, and I know a lot of people liked it. If you liked it, this is just my opinion, right? We can have different opinions. It's okay. My opinion for this one, it's much better. 3.5 out of 5. I still don't think it's the most powerful of these subclasses, but I think it's solid. And the Monk overall, I think it's really good. Like, really good. I pretty much love it. I'm really excited to play one. I want to play one in an extended campaign. In fact, I'm starting a campaign here fairly soon, and the only reason I'm not playing a monk is somebody else is going to. And I want to play something different than everybody else. So the next campaign after that, I'm hoping I get a chance to play a monk because I think they look so much fun. And I playtested multiple times the playtest monk, which was very much the same. And it's just a ton of fun and powerful. And I honestly do believe that of all the martials, and I'm including paladins and rangers in this, by the way, I think the monk might be the most powerful of all of them. And that gap between spellcaster and martial, again, it depends on the context. I think the monk could be more powerful than another caster in your party. So take that for what it's worth. But yeah, on an island, you got a wizard by themselves and they're 17th level, and you got a monk by themselves and they're 17th level. Yeah, the wizard's more powerful, right? Obviously. But when we're talking about how we actually play D&D in parties, the monk is going to be an exceptionally valuable member of that party. And so, yeah, I've got nothing but good stuff to say overall. And in my next video, what am I going to cover in my next video? I made myself a list. Oh, I'm going to talk about the Druid. Okay, so the Druid, of course, had dramatic changes because Wild Shape is totally different and major changes to the subclasses. So I'm looking forward to talking about that. Hope you'll join me for that. All you subscribers, because you're all subscribers now, right? See you next time. Till then, I'm going to sit back, relax, and have some fun. D&D is for everyone. Thanks, everybody. Talk to you soon.